Hey, howdy, hello, and welcome to the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Steam Redlight series, the series where we look at Steam's most lowly and controversially rated games to see if they're really as bad as the internet says they are. I'm your host for the day, Smirk. Today's game is called Time Ramesside, 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 and was suggested by the who call themselves Captain Canuck back on the Flat Out 3 video. It was released on May 1st of 2015 and is priced as an $8 game. It was developed and published by Panzer Gaming Studios and has 44 reviews in total, with 18% of those reviews being positive. So, interestingly enough, I actually knew about this game for a few years and knew it had way more reviews than just 44. After some very lazy research, I found that this game went through a title change, which fudges with the reviews total since it only counts reviews made after the update. If I use SteamDB.info's data, it reveals that the game actually has 337 reviews in total, with roughly 15% of those being positive. Also, if you're just like me and wonder what Ramesside means, it seems like it just means that it is a or is related to a king of a specific dynasty formed by Ramses III. By the time I've recorded this video, I'll let you know that I've already beaten the game, and I can say for certain that I have no idea what the that word has to do with anything in relation to the game. Anyway, so what I've been able to get from this story in combination with what's written on the store page, because trying to piece together the story from the game alone is impossible, is that you play as some dude named Mark who wakes up in a prison with no memory of what has happened. There's this small, balding child, some people say it's your daughter, and she runs around killing people while she looks for her dolly and summons demons from hell who are aiding in her search for Rogaine. In this game, the controls are a typical WASD first-person shooter setup with the right mouse aiming down your sights, left mouse button being fire, spacebar allowing you to jump, the R in the alphabet stands for reload, and can we please get an F in the chat for flashlight, please? If you're wondering where I learned these controls, I learned them in this menu, which isn't so bad, but I do wonder why there's an empty text box in there that I can type into. As far as weapons go, you have a handgun, and as a secondary, you have this exploding crossbow that is totally capable of killing you. It might be worth mentioning that there are no melee abilities, yet if you press C, you can open a chat box. So I guess you can take this time to try and reason with the enemies and provide them healthy hair and lifestyle tips. So, priorities, I guess. Some of the other things this game features is a level picker, infinite sprinting, and very long hallways that also double as mazes. Alright, I think that's about everything we can cover without getting into all the good or ungood things this game brings, so let's move on to what I liked about this game. So there's this one level in the game. It's called the City in the level picker, and I thought that it was kind of cool. Essentially, there's a bunch of grass that makes it hard to see. If I saw this in an actual complete game that successfully could carry atmosphere, then this would have been a good level. I just hadn't seen that kind of thing in a game before. That's about all I can say for this game in this section, so let's move on to the ungood. You know the drill, smaller things up to bigger things. The smallest of the ungoodnings, in my opinion, was the audio. There's really only like 2 songs that are in this game. There's a sort of eerie horror-like song to try and set the atmosphere. And then there's this really intense orchestral music that gets the heart pumping. And then there's this honorable mention in the first level since it has this weird dripping sound effect. You'd think it's coming from an object or will go away as you walk away from a certain section of the map, but no. It's just a sound effect layered over the song, so you'll have to listen to it the entire level. This is what I would call Ramesside water torture. Next up is the level design. The second level in particular is pretty dull because it actually is just miles of empty prison hallways. There's very little inside of it aside from fire, empty jail cells, and maybe 2 or 3 encounters with the Oblong's version of Chucky.
Could you please help me find my hair? I lost her.
Hallway 5, which is level 3, is also just one long, boring sprint fest, in addition to Outside and Prison Part 2. The maze was okay, but Sewers has no enemies except for this weird dong-like object. Many of the levels are big, empty, and boring. If you decide that you want to pick up ammo around the level, there really isn't much of a point because the next level is going to reset your ammo count to the default anyway.
We was robbed!
Also, in the level selector, the labs map doesn't work, and neither do the unoccupied gray buttons. It doesn't even truly matter what order you play these levels in using the level selector because there is absolutely no type of character or plot development at all as you go through these levels, which brings us to the next point. Time Ramesside is a gameplay first, story later game. By that I mean you experience the gameplay first, and the story comes whenever the developer feels like giving it to you. After your run-in at the first prison, you get to see Cabbage Patch Head in the second prison, where her last words to you are, of course, in a very cliche fashion, an ASMR reading of Ring Around the Rosies as she scuttles away like the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Ring around the rosy, pocket full
I now have actually revealed to you 100% of this game's plot, as there are no other encounters or pieces of lore to discover around this universe. Why is my child the devil? Does my baby mama know what I'm going through right now? Who the hell is King Ramesses? So many questions that will never be answered since the developer has moved on to other projects. Now let's talk about the enemies. The enemies, they're great. They're down to clown. Just look at these lovable losers. The enemies in this game don't hurt you at all. The only way you're dying in this game is if you kill yourself with the exploding crossbow. It's not like you had to worry about getting hit anyway. The maps are so big you can actually just avoid every enemy by sprinting, since there's no stamina and they have no urgency in getting to you, like the developer failed to pay them to care. I actually went through this whole game the first time just by running past everybody and shooting anybody who was blocking a door. You see this super big ass intimidating enemy? Just walk right by them. If you feel like killing them, you can just straight up fire 6 crossbow bolts at it and it will not respond one bit. And when you kill an enemy, they don't even die. They just disappear. They don't even know how to die properly. I like to pretend your gun isn't actually firing bullets and is instead just sucking them into the gun. It makes the game a little more enjoyable that way. Now let's get on to the final point. This game is just not finished. It's not even in early access, not that it would really justify it with how long this game has been out with how it performs. Everything I've talked about really just summarizes it up to that one point. Like, just look at the game's desktop icon. This icon doesn't even look finished. The last branch update was 5 years ago, so I don't see any improvements being made in the immediate future. This game is just kind of here, like a brain in a jar. It knows everything we wish we knew about it, yet it has no means to tell us. Well, there's not much left to talk about, so let's carry on to the end. To highlight this game's strengths, its most glowing accolade is that it got me excited for the prospect of a horror game with a grass that's too tall. To recap this game's weaknesses, the game features 2 songs. It goes literally from 0 to 60 in terms of variety. Next up, most levels are huge, empty, and meaningless. Thirdly, there is the same semblance of story here as found in one page of Goodnight Moon. In addition, enemies also don't do damage. They don't pose any real threat, and they can't even die properly. And lastly, this game is completely unfinished and has the gall to price itself at $8 normally and won't even go lower than $2 on sale. There's a lot of ungoodness going on here. There's an unfinished game that's seemingly been abandoned for 5 years as the developer goes on to release games valued at greater than $10. For example, there's X17, a mostly negative rated early access title by the same developer, released in 2016 with the last branch update in March of 2017. Then there's Sacred Stone, another early access title originally released in 2016 with its last branch update in April of 2019. Sacred Stone currently has 15 reviews in total with 53% positivity, but was re-released in 2018 with a title change which hid the true rating on Steam. This is very similar to what the developer's done with Time Ramesside. I just can't quite shake the feeling that these efforts are being executed dishonestly, and I don't see myself reviewing other Panzer Gaming games with this knowledge. I say all these things, by the way, desperately wanting to be proven wrong by the developer. I'd love to come back to Time Ramesside or try X17 and Sacred Stone knowing what I know and see something compelling. Now, there's no need for perfection when it comes to games, but there has to be more of anything that I'm seeing now. Alright, this is the end. The last video of 2020. If you like what I did here, consider supporting the channel by liking the video or sharing the video to someone who may like it. I invite anybody to check out the curator group or any of the linked social media in the description. I welcome any comments about this game, the review itself, or any suggestions you may have. And lastly, subscribe if you couldn't shirk the smirk, and maybe I'll see you next week.